TTS Talking Educators podcast. Each week we'll be joined by educational experts from across the globe offering exclusive insights, inspiration and guidance to help practitioners unlock the potential for learning in the early years. Hello, my name is Mark Loveday, your host for this week's TTS Talking Educators podcast. I'm the headmaster of Frurham College, an independent co-educational day and boarding school for students aged 7 to 19, specialising in dyslexia and co-occurring specific learning difficulties. I'm a specialist teacher, an SLE, a specialist leader of education or SEND, and have taught across primary, secondary and sixth form in both mainstream and specialist settings, holding a variety of leadership roles. I've previously set up and led SEND advisory teaching services, been responsible for the creation of diagnostic pathways for dyslexia, dyscalculia and dyspraxia, and created and led an alternative provision for students experiencing emotional-based school avoidance, which went on to win Alternative Provision of the Year in 2023. I'm a board director for the SBLD Assessment Standards Committee, known as SASC, and also a trustee of a multi-academy trust. I'm also a national and international speaker. Throughout the series, we'll be discussing a range of topics aimed at supporting SEN in primary settings, inspiring you with guidance and resources to enhance your practice. I'm delighted to welcome back Emma Jordan as today's guest. Emma, lovely to see you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Mark.
Good. Before we get started, could you give a quick introduction of yourself to our listeners?
I'm Emma. I'm a speech and language therapist. I've worked in the NHS for quite some time, and I am the joint service lead for the children's service here in Worcestershire. We're a large team of therapists and assistant practitioners working out in settings and in schools, working with children 0 to 19. And my own clinical work is in mainstream schools. I'm the co-author of the Language for Learning in the primary school and secondary school books.
Brilliant, thank you. And I, have to say, what a team they have in Worcestershire as well. I know we've worked together over the years, and it's always been an absolute pleasure in terms of the work that your team do and that knowledge that you're sharing out in settings. The focus really in this episode is going to be looking at how we can use technology not only to support communication, but also as a device for us to kind of raise our understanding as practitioners around the social communication. So really some broad headings I'd like to talk about during this podcast really are the AAC, that alternative augmentative communication, kind of benefits and challenges of using technology in the classroom. And I think, I'd like to bring in some of the older years of where it may be more beneficial, but also equally to talk about where it may be a little bit derived from the kind of core focus in early years. So shall we start with I think the biggest question is going to be for a lot of people is, what is AAC? When we say alternative augmentative communication, what do we mean?
That's a big question, isn't it, Mark?
Yes,
it's exactly what it says in the tin. It's alternative, or it's an alternative way of communicating rather than verbally, or it's a way of augmenting that verbal communication. And typically, you might see children using symbols to communicate, or using sign to communicate, or they might be using a high-tech communication device to communicate, to support their communication skills, or to make sure that their communication skills are effective. A really great source of information about AAC is the ACE Centre. So it's a charity that supports the development of AAC and assistive technology, both low-tech, so paper-based systems, as well as high-tech systems. But in terms of the low-tech systems, there's a link there, isn't there, Mark, to just providing good visual support in the classroom. So we might not realise using things like, symbols in the classroom, or using symbol pages in a classroom to help children to structure their language. That's a form of augmentative communication in terms of it supporting that child's communication skills and their language development. So some children might be using AAC for a very long period of time. Some children, you might be dipping in and out of using different ways to support their communication.
Absolutely, and I think that's a really lovely kind of, in a nutshell, what is AAC. I think we are using it without even thinking about it. So when we're saying to teachers, making sure we're backing up language with really good visuals, we are actually using a lower tech form, but it's still AAC to support our students. Thinking about that in the early years, when is, and I think we had a really big conversation in a previous episode when we were looking at a different topic, but when is too much? So when can visuals just be too much? And we've all been in those settings where you walk through that door and it's just an explosion, and for all the right reasons, but actually that's really overwhelming, and also it lacks meaning and lacks kind of focus. What's your advice in terms of an early years nursery setting and use of something like visuals and AAC?
Yeah, you've always got to think, haven't you, about children's ability to attend to lots of different forms of stimulation or lots of different focuses of their attention. And in early years, you're integrating that attention, aren't you? You're integrating what children are hearing with what they can see. And you're trying to develop that joint and shared attention so that children are listening and looking and following cues that the adult is using. I think it's all about making the actual physical environment that the child's in that moment in time as distraction free as possible, focusing on the things that you do want them to attend to. So you might have a lovely big open plan early years or nursery environment, but to stand back and look at it might be quite overwhelming. But when you then move into, say, the role play area, it's actually it's actually quite calm and focused. I mean, some early years, one of the schools that I work in their reception unit, they've just calmed everything down by the colours they've chosen around the setting and lowered everything and simplified their use of furniture, simplified what's out at any one period of time. If they've got a role play area, they've had the most wonderful shop recently. They've had a whole shop set up, but there's real fruit and vegetables in the shop, but there's not 10,000 different varieties. There's just some key things. So it's about simple is better. We talk about simplifying our language, don't we, as a key strategy to support children's language development, and not talking too quickly and not using too many words, and making sure that we're repeating keywords and extending and tuning into what children are saying. And I think visual support, whether it's through pictures or objects or photographs, or sign or gesture, needs to be simple alongside your simple use of language. So you don't really want to be showing an object and a photograph and a symbol and signing and speaking and doing everything all at the same time. You want to be thinking, well, how do we deliver this in a really clear, calm way so that children can pick out the keywords and so that they're understanding what we're trying to do? Because often the language is the vehicle for the activity. It's the language is the vehicle for engaging with either a learning task or a learning opportunity or a play-based task or a play opportunity or a social opportunity. So you don't want the language to be the barrier, but you also want to use the opportunity to teach new language skills.
Yeah, absolutely do. And I think it's also the idea of introduction of words have meaning, isn't it, as well? So just having things labelled around the setting starts to introduce this fact that actually this is the picture, this is the object, and actually words start to have meaning. I also agree with you in terms of that kind of damping it down a bit in terms of the colours and the visually overwhelming environment. Certainly one of our trust schools, or actually a couple of our trust schools, I think now, have actually gone from all that Hessian-based backboarding, and it's just calmer. It does lead to a calmer environment. And makes it better in terms of that visual discrimination when we start to bring in letters or words. So that's kind of our early years settings. Where could we start to see it feed into our primary settings, potentially into Key Stage 1?
We're moving on by that point, aren't we, Mark? Because we're developing visual skills and visual recognition skills, and we are something simple, for instance, like visual timetables and helping children to understand by using visual support. Down in early years, you might see some choice boards using pictures or symbols, or you might have and now a next type of board to help children to understand what's now and what's coming next, or a now next then board. But when you're getting into reception, you're really starting to talk about a whole morning or a whole day. So you're starting to use far more visual support to enable children to understand some of those tricky concepts. I think, without getting on a soapbox, I think visual timetables are one of the most underused resources in most classrooms. Lots of classrooms have great visual timetables. And, you know, there are many examples of visual timetables being used really effectively. But often we don't use them as well or as frequently as we should. One of the schools that I was working in this week, they've got great visual timetables with developmental progression across the school. You know, by the time you get up into Key Stage 2, their children are starting to read a 3-day timetable or getting ready to read a whole week level timetable ready for secondary. But further down the school, where they're introducing the order of the day and what's going to happen, what the expectations are in terms of, so that children know what's coming next and when snack time will be and when home time will be. They've got the children are monitors for the visual timetable, and so whoever is the monitor for that day is actually the child that goes up and talks the whole class through what have we just finished and what are we doing next, and they talk about it using the visual timetable. And it's just that great opportunity, isn't it, to, you're working left to right, you're recognizing symbols that are accompanied by words, you are using all of those concepts: now, next, first, last, before, after. You're learning sequential skills. You're learning all sorts of different skills. You know, you can talk about who's going to be in that, who and where and when, and all sorts of different concepts and language to go with time and the passing of time.
Absolutely. And also that is, you briefly touched on that in terms of that sequential language and positional language, because actually that's going to really be important when we come to start teaching the formal element of phonics. You know, the first sound, the last sound, what comes next. All of those words are so important, and yet underutilized in terms of opportunities throughout the day.
And also, Mark, it's about supporting children who maybe are a little less confident, or children who are anxious about what might happen. And a visual timetable gives you that opportunity to support a change in the timetable, or something that suddenly can't happen, but something else has got to happen instead. And you can visually show that on a timetable so that children know, well, actually, we're not doing that now, but we're doing this instead, and I know what this is that we're going to be doing instead, and at the end of the day I'm still going to go home. It's that whole idea that a change isn't going to derail a child for the rest of the day, if you can visually support their understanding so that they know what's going to happen next. We all need to know what's going to happen next, don't we, in our day?
Completely. And the power of visuals are so important for that. It's, you know, it's allowing our brain to process often at its most heightened state. So, you know, they are really, really important. I mean, thinking of technology, I mean, as we go up, there's lots of, you know, apps and technology that aids, you know, kind of that voice to text, text to speech in terms of assisting with language development. You know, and things like, you know, Call Scotland, for example, have got a variety of fantastic apps that are available either through the iPad or indeed Android devices. But let's also think about technology in terms of us as practitioners and what can we get from the plethora of information that is out there. And I suppose also, how do we distinguish between that plethora of information in terms of what's correct and research-led, and actually, you know, what is a video that's gone viral on social media?
It's a really good question, isn't it? Because Google is our friend. So we all Google absolutely everything. So I would signpost everyone to the Balance System speech, language and communication needs pathway, the SLCN pathway. So we've worked within the Balance System and with Marie Gascoigne, the developer and author of the Balance System, for many years in Worcestershire. And the Balance System is it's a framework, it's an approach, but it's so much more than that. It's a way of planning provision, planning support, a framework for commissioning, a framework for service delivery, a way of looking at impact and what we're doing and the value that we're adding. But one of the key fundamental principles is good quality information being made available for everybody, for families, but also for the wider workforce, because this is everybody, isn't it? Language and communication skills is where it's all of us. It's not just speech and language therapists and specialist teachers. It's all of us need to be aware, and all of us have got a part to play. So so our pathway, the Worcestershire SLCN pathway, sits within the Balance System pathway, and it's easy to find online. The Balance System has 5 strands within the 3 levels of as well as the 3 levels of intervention, thinking about universal targeted specialist levels of support. But there are 5 strands, which are family support, environment, getting the environment right, workforce development, identification of SLCN, and intervention. So when you hit the Balance System SLCN pathway, you can choose. You can say, I'm a parent and I'm interested in finding out some information, or I'm a practitioner, I'm interested in identification. I'm a practitioner, I'm interested in creating a communication friendly environment. So if you choose the information strand or the family strand, you can then be led through, and the Balance System has curated good links through to free information or local information. You can find, so there are other services apart from Worcestershire sitting within the Balance System pathway. Yeah. So you can find lots of information about your local area if you're involved, or national information with good links through to evidence-based interventions and support and ideas and tools that you can use as well. So that's a good starting point.
Brilliant. I think, that's a good starting point, and it's also probably a really good finishing point in terms of this podcast today, this episode. I mean, lots of takeaways there, Emma, and a really good place to finish in terms of that Balance System. We'll get that link in terms of our kind of follow-up content so that our listeners and our viewers can take that forward and look into that. It is great. I've utilised it. I've had conversations about it for a number of years, and it is very, very much worthy of a visit and a starting point. Absolutely. I'd like to say a huge thank you again, Emma, to you for joining us today. Again, such valuable insights. Thank you so very much. You've been listening to the TTS Talking Educators podcast with me, Mark Loveday, and Emma Jordan. If you've been inspired by our conversation today, don't forget you can sign up via the link in our episode notes to be the first to hear about future episodes and access exclusive follow-up content, including ideas for your settings and links to relevant resources.